Welcome to the Raising Confident Girls podcast, your guide to raising strong, confident daughters. I'm Melissa Jones, the founder of Girls Positivity Club and a teacher for over 20 years. In a world where girls often feel overwhelmed, anxious, and confused, this podcast is your go-to space. As caregivers, we navigate challenges together. I founded Girls Positivity Club to provide a place where you belong and get the tools to face today's hurdles. Consider this your regular check-in with a trusted friend, offering insights and practical tips for meaningful conversations. I'm here to help you feel confident on this journey of raising a generation of empowered girls. Let's dive in and raise those confident girls together. Hi everybody, welcome back to Raising Confident Girls. I'm so happy you're here today. And this is really an important topic that we need to discuss, which is girls' inner doubts. And this is really common for anyone, especially when they're in a growth season or learning something new or something isn't coming easily, to have those inner doubts. And I was listening to a podcast because I love podcasts, which is one of the reasons I wanted to start one. And there was an expert who was a psychologist, and he was talking about how kids, and especially going into their teen years, have this secret fear. And that is that something is wrong with them. They think that if something doesn't go well, or they're struggling with something more than they perceive their peers struggling through it, or something's not as easy for them as it is for other people, that something is wrong with them. And it really struck me because I thought, oh my goodness, like this is something that we don't often talk about because we don't want to plant doubt in our girls' minds. At the same time, I think we're also ignoring that they can have these little secret fears that they're afraid to say out loud, not because they're afraid to talk to you, but because it sounds like weak, or it sounds, they feel embarrassed by saying it. And because I think there's this internal struggle, and this is with me growing up, I had this kind of internal chaos that I was always fighting off, and, and thinking about, why am I not fill in the blank? And it can really creep in, especially as they start trying new things or doing things that are out of their comfort zone, which is good. It's healthy if those are healthy things. And I think that it's having the conversations with them that there isn't something wrong with them, that it's perfectly normal to have doubts when things aren't easy, and to process through it with them. So I'd love to support you in that today in this episode. So when I was growing up, I had this secret fear that something really was wrong with me. And I kind of found evidence of that based on, like, if a boy didn't like me, then I thought that that meant something was wrong with me. It never even occurred to me that maybe it wasn't the right type of person. Maybe it wasn't a good fit for a good reason. But I always was looking, because I was in that inner chaos all the time, from the time I was 8 years old up and through high school. And I would argue, like, even into college and those things, those times, that I thought that if someone didn't like me, whether it be a friend or a boy, that meant something was wrong with me. It never even occurred to me that it could be not the right fit for me. And I think that it always comes back to, like, oh, there must be something wrong with me, and I think a lot of girls think this way, and we don't want them to. And it's not that we're assuming they do, but I think it's way more common than what we think, is when, like, they don't feel like they fit in. Like with me, if I didn't feel like I fit in, I thought something was wrong with me. I didn't even think about that it could be the other people. Or I looked over at certain lunch tables at school, and like a group that I really thought was the cool group or the perfect group, or they all seem to have it all together. And this could be like scrolling on social media, like looking at all the people that look like they have a perfect life. It's like, well, what's wrong with me that I don't have that? I think that can be something that can creep in as a limiting belief, which is untrue, and a negative thought that, we need to teach our daughters, is that we don't have to believe those thoughts, because it really is our own brains trying to keep us safe from unsafe situations. And it's that animal part of our brain that is telling us, like, or telling ourselves, yeah, that we need to stay away from taking a risk because it could hurt us in some way. And really, that's not the truth. And knowing that when something is hard for you, so with me, it was like when we moved houses, that was really hard for me when I went to a new school. If I didn't feel like my clothes were like the name brands that everyone else was wearing, because my family did the best they could, but we didn't have like all the fancy brands and all the, I did have some really wealthy kids in my school, and I didn't wear designer clothes to school. I wore nice clothes, clean clothes, but I was sometimes thinking like, what's wrong with me that I can't be accepted for wearing this instead? And it wasn't that I was all the time made fun of, but sometimes some of those people that were mean would make comments about different people's clothing and things. This also could be if something was harder for me in sports or in academics or an activity that I'd never done before. I remember taking a sewing class for 4-H, and not knowing what I was doing. And I was like, why are other people picking up on this faster than me? Or in my typing class, and that was a whole thing. You took a class on typing, and which is kind of funny to think about now, and people typing faster than me. It's like, why am I not getting this? Is something wrong with me that I'm not picking up on this fast enough? And when I would voice those concerns with my mom, of course, she would reassure me there's nothing wrong with you. Not everybody is good at everything right away, and you just have to keep working at it. And that reassurance helped, but I still just always came back to the secret fear that maybe something really was, because I was looking at all these different areas and this chaos in my mind. I didn't have the tools that I have today to help me manage all of those thoughts. And like, what if there is? And I was really concerned about that, because it seemed like everybody else had it easier than me. And I think that's often a huge misconception, especially like I mentioned with social media, is like everything can look like a highlight reel, and it can look like someone is having the best life, and it's really not the case at all. And really everybody has some kind of fears or some kind of doubts when they're going to the next level, when they're wanting to try something they've never done before. And it's not natural to be good at something 100% of the time. That is not an expectation that is realistic for people. And I think sometimes, because we can have these ideals in our minds, and our daughters can have these ideals in our minds of, oh, they must have it perfectly and they must never mess up, or all of those things, it can create this limiting belief that something's wrong with her, and there isn't. So when I think about, girls today, I think about, that if they're not catching on to something, especially if they're good at it. So I would see this a lot in the classroom when girls would be really good in an academic subject, and then we would do something that was at a little bit of a higher level to push them out of their comfort zone, and they would really struggle and say, why am I not getting this? And I'd always remind them, have you ever done this before? And they would say, no. I'm like, that's why, because you've never done this before. Your brain is learning how to do this. It's actually good that you are learning something new. And I know it feels uncomfortable, but there's nothing wrong with feeling this way. Like, I know it doesn't feel good, but it will get better the more we do it, the more we practice. You'll make that progress, and just know that you're still good at that thing. Because what I would hear a lot of times is like, well, I'm not good at math. I'm terrible at math now. And it's like, no, no, that's not true. You're just learning something you've never done before. Or, oh, I'm not good at soccer anymore because I'm not scoring as many goals. Well, you're on a higher level team now, and that's going to eventually make you into a better player, but it's not questioning who you are and your own abilities. It's not giving up in the face of these challenges, and knowing that it's perfectly normal to not get everything perfectly. And it does not mean that there's anything wrong with you. And I think the more we can reassure our daughters of that and continue to support them in this area, the better. And the more they can think away those limiting beliefs and and have the good tools to use to do that. So it's reminding them of that, and especially as they're getting older and as they're trying new things that are healthy choices. I'm talking about, trying new academic subjects or doing new activities or up leveling in a certain thing or meeting new friends or being in new social situations. All of those things, if they don't click right away, can feel like they'll go inward and think, well, what's wrong? Like, this hasn't ever been hard for me before, or why does this happen? And it's just making sure that they know that they are going to get through it and that it does not mean that there's anything wrong with them whatsoever. So, how can you support your daughter through these things? Well, number one is creating that safe space in that open communication. I talk about this all the time is, are you open to talking about this? Or I've noticed this. How can I support you in this area? I've noticed that you've really been saying negative things about yourself in this area. How can I support you in that? Or can you tell me more about why you're feeling that way? And providing that open communication and just pausing and listening to what she has to say without jumping in for a solution or dismissing how she feels, and just validating and saying, I see how you could feel that way. And then, having that conversation that's of support, and asking how you can support her, or asking if she's open to ideas of a different perspective and things like that, I think are really crucial to helping her know that she can come to you about anything without judgment. And that's really what we want. Is we don't want our daughters to feel like they have to hide things and that they can't say, like, I'm kind of afraid that there might be something wrong with me because this isn't going well. Like, I feel like a failure in this certain area, and it feels weird to say that because I don't think there is anything. And then that's when you can really support her in that area, and knowing that it's safe for her to say anything to you and that you won't judge her for it, that you'll be there and you'll listen, the best you can, and try not to panic if they say something that sounds a little bit scary. I've had a lot of conversations with girls where they can have some, darker thoughts, and I was able to share those things with my mom, and it really did help me, especially once she knew how much I was hurting. In my case, it turned into a positive thing because I was then able to open up to her even more, even though I did talk to her a lot, especially once I started therapy too, because mine got to a dangerous level where she did seek outside support. And then, of course, she also supported me in that. So just having that safe space where she knows that she can come to you to talk, and it's validating those feelings. Again, like I mentioned, it's saying, like, I understand how you could feel that way, and giving those examples. Like, it's completely normal to feel left out when your friends are all kind of meeting new people, and it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It just means that they're meeting other people, and maybe you need to say something to her about feeling left out, and it's going to feel uncomfortable. But if you don't say anything, it could just continue, and you would just continue feeling this way. So sometimes we have to do things that are uncomfortable, that are healthy, like speak up and say how you're feeling to a friend, or think of it in a new perspective. But I understand how you feel, and I felt that way too, and maybe give an example. And, as much as we think that kids don't like to hear our childhood examples, they really do, because it makes them feel normal. It makes them feel like they're not alone. And even if you don't have a specific example for what they're sharing with you, if you can think of something that is someone that they know or they admire, and in your family, or someone in the world that they admire that something about, who's faced something similar, I think just knowing that, like, gosh, if they could feel this way too, then you're not alone. Not everybody has everything perfectly, and it's totally normal to feel the way you're feeling, and I'm here to support you. I think that's so, so important. Another thing you can do is have safe connections with her. And that is, just having that connection time where you reassure her of your unconditional love and support, and you say out loud, and I mentioned this in some other episodes, I love you no matter what. And even if you're having these negative feelings or you're having a hard time with something, I'm always here to support you, and I'm always here to help you through anything you need. I think we assume that our daughters know these things, and they do, but they still need to hear it. It's kind of like when you're at your job and no one's really telling you you're doing a good job. You know you are. And it's not that you need that every second, but it still feels good to be told that someone notices the good work that you're doing or the progress that you're making. And so it's reassuring her that it's okay to have these thoughts and these worries. You don't have to be scared of them, but also they make you human. They make you human because everybody has them, even people that you wouldn't think would, that seem to have a perfect life or seem to be really good at that thing that you strive to be. I guarantee that they also have had struggles and they also have worked through it to be stronger on the other side. So we're not giving up. We're here, I'm here to support you. And you can tell me, do you want me just to listen, or do you want us to come up with some ideas of things that you could try that would help you to know that you're not alone and to keep going? So that's another thing, is to provide that connection and reassurance with her. And then also just making it normal of her concerns, just saying these are fears and things that I've felt insecure about in the past, and here's why, and giving those examples. Like, I remember feeling scared when I was younger, and it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. When I used to get up to bat when I played softball, my heart would beat out of my chest, and I worried that I would strike out, and I tried not to think about that. I tried to replace that. What if I strike out? My teammates will be upset with me. I'll be disappointed in myself, all this, to even the best players strike out. And I tried to replace that with my dad's voice that worked with me. He worked with me so much on softball. And he'd say, watch the ball and keep your chin up and do this and that. Like, I would repeat those things that would help me. And just remembering to be your own cheerleader in those situations too is so, so important. And also, it's offering other perspectives. Like I mentioned in the beginning, that, as far as like when friends didn't like me or I felt rejected in some way, I never thought that it could be a good thing for me, because those people weren't for me. Did I really want to surround myself with people who judged me based on, whatever it would be, the way that I look, or that I wasn't as popular as other people, or things like that? Are those really the kind of people that I cared what they thought? And I think because I was so lost at that time, I did put a lot of stock in what they thought. But another perspective could have been, wait a minute, is that true? Like, does it really matter if this person likes me? Like, do I have other people in my life that are good, or could I find better people to hang out with who are more my fit and who are kind and accepting and all of that? Who are the types of people that I want to surround myself with? Is it the people that are judgy and that make fun of other people and only include certain people, or super exclusive of who joins their group? Or do I want to be around people who help you feel like you belong for being yourself and include others, and don't care about status of whatever, or don't care that you're the star athlete or whatever? They accept you for who you are. And I think sometimes fears in our minds, we all know this, can get bigger than they really are in reality. We can make them into this huge, huge thing. And it's about stopping it and flipping it to another perspective of, how else could we look at this? And you helping your daughter and seeing that, like, well, maybe they're not for you. Have you ever thought of that? Or I had a girl who felt like that she was doing all the work in this project, and she was like always getting the supplies and always like running around and getting things, because she hosted this project group at her house, and they were going to work on this group project together. And she was like, I feel super stressed when they come over, and I feel like I have to do all the work. And it's like, well, why didn't you ask them for help? Or Did you ask them to bring supplies too? And, what could you do in this case so that you're not feeling like you have to be the teacher, the like leader of this project? How could we look at this in a more collaborative way to where you think, oh, could I delegate some of this? Do I have to do all of this myself? And so that could be, going back to that inner doubt of like, why do I feel like I always have to be in charge of these things? It's like, well, let's flip it and think, how could I get more support in this certain area? Is it asking them to bring certain supplies? Is it saying, hey, would you mind grabbing like just two pairs of scissors? They're over there in that drawer, and not feeling like you have to be the one hustling all over the house to get things if you're hosting something like that. Or maybe having it in a different location where all the supplies would be there for you, like at the library or something. And it's really just thinking of different ways to look at things that can often shift the perspective and make it smaller in their minds, or give them something else to think about. Like, oh, it actually may not be anything about me, especially if they are people pleasers or they want everybody to be happy all the time, and they tend to avoid conflict, which is very common with girls, especially as they get older. There's this other like secret fear of losing, like if they really speak up, that they'll lose those friends, and because they'll be so mad at them, they'll just stop being friends with them. So it's like, no, that's actually not true. You have to communicate with your friends, and helping support her in that way. So in helping her in these inner doubts that often creep in, anytime, I feel like if you're human, this is something that can happen, and it doesn't have to destroy their self-esteem, or it doesn't have to be something they're scared to talk about. It can be very normalized, and thinking like everybody has doubts, especially if they're doing something they've never done before, they're around new people, or whatever the case would be. And it's okay. And I'm here to support you is one of the best things that you can do for her. And, really, there are a lot of positive outcomes to even having these conversations that can feel a little bit scary for both you and her, because we never want to plant seeds of doubt or bring up things that we think could add to their stress or fear. But I think avoiding them is not the way to go about it either. We have to check in and see if these things are even a concern. And especially noticing her behavior and any changes in behavior is something to address and to just openly talk about, and to do it in a gentle and loving way as much as you can, not in the heat of something when it could be escalated into an argument. And if that does happen, we all have those moments. Just try again. Just keep trying in different ways that fit with your daughter. And, sometimes that can even be in written conversation. We've talked about that before on the podcast. Is written conversation is very powerful too. You can write her a little letter, a little note, and communicate in those ways too is really important and really valuable. So the good outcomes of doing this work with her and just acknowledging these fears, sometimes just saying them out loud and doing what you would do in your family to support any time you have this, is really takes, it's like slaying the dragon in a way. If you think of it as like a fear being big like a dragon, it's like once you acknowledge it, it makes it smaller. And then once you have more conversations about it and come up with different ways to flip the perspective or to reassure her or talk about it, whatever that would be, it makes the fear get smaller and smaller. And it doesn't mean that that'll never come back again, but it's in helping her have good coping with times when she does have that inner doubt or she does have that inner fear, which is going to come up again if she's growing as a person. And that's what we want her to do, especially is like grow in new ways. And that way she can reach her full potential and do things that she never thought she could do, and be so proud of herself and all of the good things that come with facing fears and pushing through that inner doubt, to do healthy things. And it's going to increase her self-confidence. It's going to increase her self-acceptance in knowing that it's okay to be herself, and she doesn't have to be perfect in these areas. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with her if she doesn't catch on to something as fast as other people, or if she has to work a little bit harder at it than other people, it does not mean there's anything at all wrong with her. It just means that that's something that she has to put some effort into, and she will get there. And it improves her coping skills. So having all of these strategies in place and supporting her through it helps her know that there is a way. It builds her resilience. It helps her manage stress. It helps her have that good overall well-being, which is what we want for our girls, isn't it? Is like we want them overall to have a good well-being. And that doesn't mean it's perfect all the time. That doesn't mean she's happy all the time. All feelings are valid, and it's having those feelings come as they need to come, acknowledging them, and knowing that those other feelings are also appropriate when you are going through something, and having her be supported and navigating new social situations. So it's giving her all those tools and those coping skills with dealing with those things, which also increases her confidence and lets her see that when she gets through some of those things, she can do it. And lastly, it just gives you that really good, strong bond with your daughter, and knowing that you are her safe person she can come to. You are that warm adult. You are that person that can help her challenge negative thoughts, know that she can do anything, be her biggest cheerleader alongside her, and help her think in different viewpoints when she's open to it. So I think that anytime we can see something in a different way, especially presented in a way that's super loving and open and kind, is really a great thing that you can do for your daughter. Because sometimes those fears can get out of control and big, but once we say them out loud and we do these things, they, like I said, they get smaller, just like the dragon slayer. You slay that dragon of fears. So thank you so much for being here. And if you have anything that you would add to this conversation, I would love to hear from you on social media at Girls Positivity Club and Girls Positivity Club at Gmail. And also, I would love it if you would share this episode with anyone that it would help in raising confident girls. And as always, we love those reviews, and 5 stars is also such a gift, and it helps more people see this podcast. So thank you so much for being here. And until next time, keep raising those amazing, confident girls. Thanks for joining another empowering episode of the Raising Confident Girls podcast. Share today's insights with caregivers and friends, building beautiful relationships with strong girls. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're not just a podcast, we're a community. Follow Girls Positivity Club on social media for more empowering content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. This podcast empowers you, supporting incredible girls. Let's create strong, beautiful relationships with the girls in our lives. I appreciate you listening today. Stay confident, stay connected. Until next time, keep raising those confident girls. You've got this.